So the book is launching today. This is it. So big opportunity out there in terms of tweeting it, social media, etc. Because there's all sorts of gifts and that sort of thing that people can get if they order the book today. The goal is, of course, to be an Amazon bestseller, and the more books that are sold today, the more it proves the system. So over the time, I've built a network of 24,000 people through email, Facebook, LinkedIn, 11,500 direct connections on LinkedIn, 5,000 Facebook friends, etc. So today we have incredible tools of social media that allow us to connect and be present and to show up for people online in ways that we've never done before. But I want to emphasize today that those tools of technology are going to change. Your Facebook may be Oculus VR in 10 years. You may be doing virtual reality instead of, just commenting and posting on Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg paid $2 billion to buy a virtual reality company in Irvine, California. And oh, by the way, I met with them a week ago Friday in Southern California. Fantastic company. But the point I want to emphasize is those tools of technology will change over time. What the book emphasizes is that there are 6 timeless principles of connecting and building and forming relationships and maintaining those relationships over time. And that's going to make all the difference in your business career. If you are able to connect with people at a deep and meaningful level, then the relationship will become actionable over time. I believe in the law of reciprocity that exists in the universe, that if you go out of your way to help somebody else, then they're going to help you. By way of example, some years ago, in 2003, as a matter of fact, I was contacted by a random guy out of Silicon Valley. He was just moving to Utah. His wife was going to attend the University of Utah Medical School. And he asked me, Dave, can I take you to lunch? I want to talk to you about venture capital in the state of Utah. Maybe get a few introductions. So I went to lunch with the guy, and we had a nice conversation. And I says, hey, Don, next week we can set up a day, and I'll take you to visit a series of venture capital funds here in the state of Utah, which we did, and we had a good day. And as that day was wrapping up, I had a meeting with John Hunchman Jr., the then governor of the state of Utah, and I says, Don, why don't you come along? I'll introduce you to the governor and so forth, and he really enjoyed that. So we went up, had a nice meeting with the governor. I really didn't hear from Don again for 5 years, right? But I'd formed a relationship, a bond that day, where he trusted me, right? I'd gone out of my way to do something for him. So in early 2008, I get a call from Don. Hey, Dave, how you doing? Doing great. Lots of fun things going on in my life. He says, hey, I found it. I says, well, you found it? He says, I found this great technology company in Salt Lake City. They make a solid state disk drive for data centers. I says, well, tell me more. Sounds fascinating. So I went up, met with Don, met with the team. The company's name was Fusion.io. At the time, Fusion.io had this much revenue, 0, right? This is June of 2008. But we changed all of that. I became CEO. We signed deals with IBM. We signed deals with HP. We signed deals with Samsung. The company took off. We took it public 3 years later in June of 2011. It achieved a $3.8 billion market value. Now, when I think of, and that's 3.8 billion, that's not million, 3.8 billion market cap. It's not trading at that today. It's had a few rough patches here over the last year or two. That's fine, still a great company. The point is, I would have never joined Fusion.io but for having done a favor for somebody 5 years earlier. You never know who you may have a relationship with that can be extremely impactful. And it's the small things in life that can change everything. You see I have this laptop signed by Steve Wozniak. I'm not going to bore you with the entire Steve Wozniak story today. You can read about it in the book. Enjoy that. But it was at an event I was at in Sun Valley, Idaho in July of 2008, not long after joining Fusion.io. And I was faced with an opportunity. I was faced with a challenge, if you will. I was there, I spoke at the same conference Wozniak was at. Now as I'm leaving my speech, I didn't know Wozniak was going to be there. As I'm leaving my speech, some young lawyer stopped me and we started to chat about something. And I looked down at a piano bench and I saw a piece of paper. And it says, keynote speaker, Steve Wozniak. And I went, wow, fantastic. These guys got Steve Wozniak to come to this conference. And oh, by the way, I spoke, alongside him. Didn't even know it. This is fantastic. But I love to play golf. I see my old friend Craig Christensen in the audience here. Craig was regional legal counsel for the LDS Church and was in my legal staff at Novell for many years and very instrumental in what we accomplished there. But I had a choice to make that day in my life. I could go play golf. I had a 10:50 a.m. tee time at the Sun Valley Golf Course. Or I could go listen to Wozniak speak. Now, because of my passion for golf, this may not have been as tough a decision for some of you, but I love to play. And so now I'm walking out. I can go play golf. I can go listen to Woz. I make that small decision to stay. And I stayed and listened to Wozniak. And by the way, when I stayed, I sat in the front row like these guys. I'm David.
I'm Anders.
Kyle.
I'm Scott.
Nice to meet you guys. Thanks for sitting in the front row. It's probably the only seats left, but I appreciate it anyway. I sat in the front row. Another very small decision, seemingly small. 500 people in the audience. Sat down, reached my hand out just like I did to these guys, and I said, I'm David Bradford. Introduced myself to the young lady sitting next to me, and she says, my name's Julie. I said, Julie, what do you do? She says, I'm Steve Wozniak's executive assistant. Now you think coincidence, serendipity, etc. I will tell you, the harder you work at things in your life, the more lucky you become, the luckier you become, the more serendipitous your life becomes. When you're out there, you're connecting with people, you're showing up, great things will happen in your life. So many of you have the book already, Up Your Game, 6 Timeless Principles for Networking Your Way to the Top. Hope you'll read it. Hope you'll comment on it. I hope you will each reach out to connect with me on LinkedIn. But please do it in a personal way. That's one of the keys to successful networking. I remember connecting with Malcolm Gladwell a couple of years ago. Malcolm and I went to a speech that Malcolm gave. We got to chatting after the speech. And I reached out to Malcolm. And people think, Malcolm Gladwell, wow, he's that world famous author of Outliers, et cetera, et cetera. But I did it in a personal way. I sent him a note, and I commented on track and field. They think, Malcolm Gladwell, track and field. Well, do you know that Malcolm Gladwell set the Canadian high school record in the mile run? He ran a 4:15 mile when he was 15 years old, living in a small town in Canada. That's very, very impressive. For those of you who know track and field, that's almost world class, right? And so I sent Malcolm an email, not on his books, I sent him an email about track and field. He loved it. And to this day, we have a wonderful correspondence going back and forth. You can read about that story a little bit more in here. But I thought I'd share with you today, because I do give a lot of speeches on this and the 6 timeless principles in here, and I've mentioned some of them today. But I thought I'd take a moment to share with you what I've learned from some of the greatest technology leaders of all time. And so I'll just kind of flip through some of these slides and give you some takes. What I learned from Bill Gates. Well, let me first ask you this question. No, I'm going to save that question for a second. Craig and I, in the legal department at Novell, battled against Bill Gates and Microsoft for a number of years. In fact, our legal department filed the first antitrust complaint against Microsoft. We did that. We filed it in Europe in June of 1992. It started a 15-year saga of antitrust litigation against Microsoft for their monopoly of the desktop operating system. But I will tell you, over time, I served at one point, or 2 occasions, as chairman of the Business Software Alliance, which was a software piracy organization that fought against software piracy. and for business software companies like Novell, Microsoft, Oracle, etc. And while I sat on that board, I had the privilege of working a great deal with the general counsel of Microsoft, my counterpart, a fellow by the name of Bill Newcomb. Now, say what you want about Microsoft and say what you want about Bill Newcomb, but they are smart people. The thing I learned from Bill Gates is that he hires smart people. I can't recall anybody I ever met during those years from, say, 85, which is the time I started working with Microsoft, probably until 2000, interacted with a lot of Microsoft folks. They were always very smart. So hire smart people. Smart people, people with passion, can make all the difference in your organization. Now, you've all heard of Bill Gates. How many people in this room have heard of Gary Kildall? John's heard my story before, maybe. John, good to see you again. Wonderful PR guy, a longtime friend. But Gary Kildall, forget Bill Gates. Bill Gates didn't invent anything. He didn't invent the PC operating system. He didn't invent Windows, etc. Gary Kildall is the father of the personal computer operating system. You would not be doing what you do with your laptop today, but for the life of Gary Kildall. In 1977, at the Monterey Naval Research Laboratories, Gary Kildall found this chip from Intel, I think it was the Intel 4046, and utilizing that chip and some software he wrote, he connected and gave you the ability to type on a keyboard like this and see your characters appear on the screen. This is the first personal computer operating system. It was called CPM. What I learned from Gary Kildall, and this is kind of a sad story, he died tragically, get this, in a bar fight in Monterey, California in 1994. The man who should have been Bill Gates. The reason he was not Bill Gates is because of certain character flaws. He liked to drink too much, maybe did a little drugs, etc. I knew Gary, didn't know him that well, but I knew from reputation, etc., he had some issues. He was a brilliant technologist, to be sure, but when the time came to negotiate a contract with IBM in 1981, because it was 1981 when IBM first came out with their personal computer. When they came out with that personal computer, they needed an OS, a desktop operating system. They first reached out to Gary Kildall. Kildall didn't show up for the first half of the meeting. I don't know. You can read it online. It says he was out flying in his airplane. So it kind of blew off IBM. When he came back into the meeting was going south, didn't go well. Kildall was arrogant, kind of booted the IBM guys out of his office. They fly back to Boca Raton, Florida. They don't have a PC operating system. They're frustrated. Bill Gates did. You know what Bill Gates did? He heard about the blown meeting. He went and bought QDOS, stands for Quick and Dirty Operating System. He bought it from Seattle Computing Products in Seattle, Washington. Moved his offices to Redmond, and the rest is history. He went back, signed the contract with IBM, and it was arguably the most important contract in the history of the world. It made Bill Gates the richest human being on planet Earth, right? So what I learned from Kildall is that character means everything. Never do anything in your personal or professional life that is going to cause the other side, a party, to question their ability to want to do business with you. What I learned from Steve Young. He's been kind enough to endorse my book and has been a longtime friend. We met in 1986. I was there when he won the 1994 Super Bowl in Miami. And I can remember, this is a story you wouldn't know from the press, but Steve had not drunk anything during that entire game. They were playing the San Diego Chargers for the World Championship. And he was so nervous about the game that he did not drink the entire game. And he gets in a limo after to go meet us and some other friends at the Super Bowl party in Miami, starts to throw up because he's completely dehydrated. We walk into the hospital room. We go over from the Super Bowl party. Steve's in the hospital, so we go running over there. We walk in. I can remember he raised up his IV-attached arms. He goes, "Dave, thanks for coming. You showed up. I never threw 6 touchdown passes in Pee Wee football, and I did it in the Super Bowl." It was a remarkable moment in time. But what I like about Steve is the fact he'd always take accountability, right? As a leader, that's what you have to do. And it was a hard lesson for Steve to learn, right? So he goes to the 49ers, he's following Montana, et cetera, and trying to drive his name in the annals of NFL history. And what he doesn't realize is when he's throwing those interceptions or making a mistake or the team's not doing well, he was like blaming it on the offensive tackle. "Hey, you should have blocked. Guy blindsided me. You know, you should have done better on your route. You didn't do well doing that," etc. So it was kind of the blame game initially. But over time, Bill Walsh taught him that he had to take accountability. So he would start going over the sidelines and say, "Guys, not your fault. I blew that one. It's all on me. We're going to do this next drive. We're going to be successful." So Steve talks a lot about accountability. And, you know, it completely changed the dynamic with his teammate and so forth. What I learned from Cindy Crawford. Cindy's cute, let's be honest. I was at an event, gosh, it was earlier, it was June of last year, and she spoke, and one of the points she made is that everybody has worth. Never underestimate the value of a connection. So I hope you'll all go out tonight, connect with me on LinkedIn, try to do it in a personal way, and I'll try to reciprocate, time permitting, with a personal note back. Because those relationships to me mean a lot. I remember going to work or going to lunch with an out-of-work sales rep a couple of years back, and he was frustrated. He didn't have a job. He was in sales. He wanted some connections into the IT world. And I said, you know, happy to go to lunch with you, et cetera. I go to lunch with the guy. As we're walking out of lunch, he says, "Dave, thank you for these referrals." I'd given him the names of 4 CEOs to contact. And he said, "Thank you so much. Now what can I do for you?" And I initially blew him off. I said, "Don't worry about it. It's fine. Life's good. I got a bunch of meetings I got to run to." He grabs me by the shoulders as we're leaving Maggleby's Fresh. He says, "No, Dave, what can I do for you?" I says, "Well, listen, you know, crazy. I'm raising an international sports fund with David Checketts." Dave was president of Madison Square Garden, the New York Knicks, Real Salt Lake, you know the name. Dave's a great guy. And we were working on this international sports fund, and I said, "Hey, you wouldn't happen to know like a high net worth individual that has a passion for sports?" He kind of paused. He says, "You know, when I worked for WordPerfect some years ago, I worked in the Middle East. And I met a guy in my church congregation over there that was the financial advisor for a Saudi prince." Sounds like he might have some money. And I says, "Oh, you know, that would be great if you could hook us up. Fantastic." So that's at noontime, 1 o'clock. I now go home to my home in Provo, go across the street from Maggleby's Fresh. We live in the river bottoms down there. And I get an email. It's from this guy I just had lunch with. He says, "I want to introduce you to Jim Phelps." Jim is the financial advisor for Prince Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. I was on a plane that night to LA. I arrive at LAX. I drive to the Prince's mansion in Beverly Hills, and there I am pitching this international sports fund. It went great, etc. The point is, never underestimate the value of a connection someone might be able to make for you. Reach out, give to them, and you will thereby be successful in building and connecting that network.